Everybody, Mike Naso here from podweather.com and Internet Partnership Radio with a video update on Tropical Storm Faye and the rest of the tropics. You can see the last 36 hours or so, Faye has continued to track. It came over Hispaniola, left Haiti, and then has moved now a little bit more towards the west-northwest and is just south of the Cuban coastline. And it hasn't strengthened as much as conditions are getting a little less favorable for development. I'll show you that in a second. Here's latest on Tropical Storm Faye as of 11 a.m. Eastern Time. It was at 20.5 north, 78.6 west. And that centers it right south here of the eastern part of Cuba. And its winds are 50 miles an hour, gusting to 65. It's moving west-northwest at 12 and 1,003 millibars. And that general movement is expected to bring it inland maybe around midnight tonight, early Monday morning. And then it should leave Cuba early Monday morning, early afternoon, and then start to strengthen and then become a hurricane and make landfall early to mid-morning Tuesday on the west coast of Florida and then weaken and head on up. But there is uncertainty in the exact track, especially with a weak system like this. If it starts moving a little bit further north, it can certainly be on the right edge of this cone and even head up towards the Carolinas. If it continues more west, it could hit western Cuba and then move out and hit the Panhandle. And that's why there's uncertainty as well with the time frame. As I mentioned yesterday, it could be inland as early as Monday afternoon or evening, or as late as Wednesday afternoon or evening, depending on where the coastline it impacts. So there's a lot of uncertainty. Hurricane watches and warnings and tropical storm watches and warnings up Cuba, as well as the coast of Florida. We now have that hurricane watch, including the Keys, and that's likely to be changed to a warning as it continues to move up in that general direction. Now there's the visible satellite of Tropical Storm Faye, and again it's centered right in there, and you can see the convection bursting, but if you notice here, we still have a little bit of rotation. Note the rotation in here over eastern Cuba. See that? We almost still kind of have it competing with, this kind of vorticity, this turning, this twisting in here, and this is the actual center, so it's competing with itself. And when you see these stable clouds in here and you see some of that shear, it's not in a good area for development as it was looking a few days ago. And land is only being a factor to inhibit that. So while it is bursting there at the end, the center is over here, there's twisting in here, there's shear, it's kind of stable. The likelihood of this becoming at least a significant hurricane for Florida is decreasing, and that is very good news. Anybody in Florida definitely wants to hear that. Well, as far as Florida is concerned right now, you can see the rainfall coming in with the rain bands around Faye, and that's going to be coming into the Florida Keys over the next, say, 12 to 24 hours, and that's going to persist as the system grows closer. As far as Cuba is concerned, you can see the center there just south of the Cuban coastline. If it can stay over water and develop a tight inner core, it could become a hurricane before it hits Cuba. And if that's the case, then it could potentially be a stronger hurricane over the Gulf. But if it stays a weak tropical storm as it moves over Cuba, then it may never even become a hurricane. So there's a lot of variables here with Faye. Again, looking at it from further away, this upper level low here is kind of shearing it a bit, and you can see the convection has decreased overall. And again, the pattern is just not nearly as favorable as it was. Now, as far as the track's concerned, you can see the hurricane center is bringing it over western Cuba, weakening it just a little bit, then bringing it close to Key West, and then turning northward, and then a little bit to the north-northeast and coming straight up Charlotte Harbor. And again, there's a lot of uncertainty because some of the BAM models here are showing a bit of a northwesterly course to no gaps. The UK Met's a bit further west. And so the hurricane center has tilted it a bit further east towards the end because of that, but there's no real change significantly other than a slight eastward shift from the 5 a.m. advisory. But again, anywhere in this general region could be impacted by Tropical Storm Faye. Again, what areas are at risk? Well, right now, if the center comes in where it's looking, it would be Fort Myers, Punta Gorda, and up into that region, say Arcadia, areas impacted 4 years ago by Hurricane Charlie. This is not going to be a Hurricane Charlie by any means, thankfully, but it could still be a hurricane. But if it heads further north, you're talking about a much more populated area. St. Petersburg, Tampa, Clearwater, Bradenton Beach, Sarasota, those areas. If it heads further south, you're talking about Sanibel Island, Naples, Marco Island. You got to watch exactly where Faye tracks. Now, one reason why it hasn't strengthened is the upper level high pressure over the top of it, this very favorable high I've been showing you for days. Well, what ended up happening is the center of Faye is right here. Okay? The center of the upper level anticyclone is right here. If it were over the top of Faye, Faye would have that ventilation. Instead, what Faye has is the high pressure down here and the low up here, which means that it's actually getting sheared by the anticyclone. And this happens sometimes if the high pressure is blowing those clockwise winds into the tropical cyclone rather than ventilating it up and over, and that's what's happening now. If this were centered directly over Faye, it would be strengthening a much better clip. Again, conditions might not be all that favorable in the Gulf, especially the further north it heads. If it stays relatively close to the coast, has an inner core, is small over those warm waters, there's a chance it might be enhanced a bit and be able to spin up into a hurricane. But again, it's not nearly as favorable as it was looking 24, 48 hours ago. In the final analysis on Faye, again, it's centered right here. There is some bursting, but again, it's very favorable off to the south and east and the north, but look at this western side, how jagged and flat it is. If it can burst and get rid of that and then come on up, it has a chance at strengthening. If not, it might not even make hurricane. But right now it is forecast to be a hurricane due to those very warm waters in the Gulf of Mexico. Now elsewhere in the Atlantic, we do have this tropical wave in the central Atlantic moving on into view. Watch it. Further off Africa, you can see another wave behind that, and you can see them pulling off here. It is August, so we're going to have to keep an eye on it. Eastern Pacific, tropical storm Isel is gone, no longer dealing with that. We do have some convection, but doesn't look like we're going to have anything in the next few days. And in the Western Pacific, look at this. You would think this is a typhoon. It's actually weaker than Faye. It's a 40-mile-an-hour tropical storm. This is Nuri. And tropical storm Nuri is 40 miles an hour, gusting to 50. It's forecast to become a very powerful typhoon and head towards Taiwan by Friday. Right now it's moving west at 19. You can see that there. This goes to show the different type of organization. Faye is a bit stronger than this, but clearly this is more favorable looking than Faye has ever been and will ever be probably, which is why this is going to be a major hurricane and Faye probably will not. I'm Mike Naso from IPR. Stay tuned. Live coverage begins on IPR365.com at 8 p.m. It'll go until after Faye has made landfall. Stay tuned.